Hannah's mother wrote a Regency romance novel starring Hannah as a character. Here's what I said in my review of the previous book. And please let this be an actual storyline, not just a random thing that gets mentioned once or twice. It looks like my detective instincts were right. The romance novel isn't a storyline, it's the setup for a joke scene in the last chapter. What a disappointment.
Argofont Book Review, Argofont Book Review.
The book starts with Ronni Ward getting into a fight. Ronnie's a beautiful woman who's always flirting with men. She doesn't care if they're married or not. Hannah hates Ronnie for being promiscuous, which isn't exactly fair. Hannah has multiple boyfriends too. I'm pretty sure the I hate Ronnie for dating multiple guys thing is an excuse. The real reason Hannah hates Ronnie is that she's jealous of how skinny and beautiful Ronnie is. Hannah is especially worried about her weight because she no longer fits into the special dress her mother got for her. Hannah has to do 2 weeks of intense dieting and exercise to get in shape for Mother's book release party. It'll be tough for Hannah to stick to a diet when she talks about a different food recipe every other chapter. Hannah starts her diet by lying to her sister. She says she didn't eat much, when in reality she ate jam, several cookies, a bowl of ice cream, a large pizza, double garlic bread, and tons of candy bars. Something tells me this diet won't go well. Later that day, Mike says it's good she's trying to get in shape. Ever the grammar nerd, Hannah is offended. Trying to get in shape? That means she's not in shape. How dare Mike insult her like that? Hannah is sarcastic about using exercise machines. She gets an order to make cookies shaped like cheeseburgers, and Lisa becomes aggressive about raising prices. Her new prices seem to work just fine, so Hannah puts Lisa in charge of the business end of the bakery. Let's be honest, Lisa practically runs the bakery by herself anyway. In the mandatory cat subplot, Moish gets an automatic cat food dispenser. It releases food whenever his bowl is empty. Moish goes through twice as much food as normal, but he doesn't seem to be gaining weight. Hannah gets a security camera so she can watch her cat eat. That strikes me as a little extreme. Maybe she could get a security camera for her store before she gets one for her cat's food bowl. After moving the camera around a lot, Hannah and friends eventually realize Moish is moving the extra cat food back into the cat food bag. Hannah wasn't observant enough to notice her bag of cat food was magically getting refilled every day. Now I wonder how Hannah got a reputation for being a good detective when she is clearly not a master of observation. Hannah helps her neighbor find a part-time job, and she makes a meal with frozen hash browns instead of making them from scratch. The scandal! She complains that her to-do list is too much for her to handle. Her to-do list has 5 things on it. Oh, Hannah, you poor overworked thing. When Hannah wakes up the next day, she panics for several pages because she thinks she had a stroke. Her body feels so weird. She eventually realizes her muscles are stiff from working out. Has she never exercised before? Ever? Ronni Ward takes over as an instructor for a gym class. She rudely insults everyone there. She's doing it on purpose. She wants the women to be mad so they'll exercise harder, but she's still unnecessarily cruel. Speaking of cruel, Mike takes Hannah's special cream puffs so he can give them to Ronnie as a birthday present. He lies about why he wants them. The mystery starts a little over a third of the way through the book. Hannah goes to the gym and she finds Ronnie dead in the jacuzzi. It's a police rule that you can't work on a murder case if you have a personal connection to the victim. As it turns out, this rule applies to the boyfriends of all 3 Swensen sisters. Michelle isn't happy to learn her boyfriend Lonnie went out with another woman. Yeah, she told him they should date other people, but she didn't actually think he'd do it. Michelle, you've got no one to blame but yourself. Andrea's husband Bill never dated Ronnie, but he touched her in public at one point, which started a bunch of rumors they're having an affair. Andrea is heartbroken to hear this, because she'd rather believe anonymous rumors than trust her husband. Since all the detectives aren't on the case, they bring in a new chief detective, Stella Parks. She's a tough cop who's more than willing to have Hannah's help. I'm going to give Stella the Best Drop Subplot award because there's a fair amount of build up to her, but she only shows up once. Bill and Mike eventually find alibis for themselves, and they go back to working on the case like Stella's appointment never happened. All three detectives try to solve the case by using Hannah as a go-between. She mostly ignores them and their orders, except for Mike. He calls at midnight every night to meet in secret by the dumpster. He apologizes to Hannah for the Ronnie situation. He knows it looks bad, but he swears nothing happened between him and Ronnie. He was just trying to help her get through a tough time, and whenever he stayed at her apartment, he fell asleep on the couch. We meet the two security guards. Frank Curley is a strict old man who hates promiscuous women. Sounds like a motive to me. His nephew Tad is kind of sleazy. He makes up cutesy nicknames for every woman he meets. Michelle recognizes him from somewhere. She later realizes, oh yeah, he was a security guard at her college. He was fired for stalking one of the teaching assistants. Mike calls at midnight again. He tells Hannah that her investigation is a waste of time and she's doing it all wrong. She gets mad, but then he kisses her. He's so good at kissing, she doesn't care that he casually insults her constantly. The crime lab report says Ronnie was drunk and she was killed by a blow to the head. Andrea makes a point of asking for Ronnie's weight on the report because she wants to know if Ronnie weighed more than her. Ronnie is dead, Andrea. Let it go. They watch 60 hours of security tapes, which takes forever and reveals no new information. Hannah gushes over low-calorie desserts. Mother and Carrie go undercover at a bar, where Ronnie was recently fired as a waitress. They learn Ronnie was fired for stealing money, and she complained she felt someone was watching her whenever she used the gym's jacuzzi. Hannah's too tired to go home that night, so Norman lets her sleep at his house. He sleeps in the guest bedroom. Since Norman specifically designed this to be Hannah's dream house, it's got perfect heating, her initial is on the bathroom towels, and there are brushes that perfectly match hers. It's nice, but it's also borderline creepy. Why won't you marry me, Hannah? I already monogrammed the towels. We should get married. When Mike hears Hannah spent the night at Norman's, he assumes that Hannah's having revenge sex for all the times he slept with Ronnie. That's a pretty casual way for Mike to admit he cheated on Hannah multiple times and lied about it. If you count Shawnee and Vanessa from Book 7, this is the third time Mike has cheated on Hannah with another woman. Hannah should dump Mike for good at this point, but alas, there are 7 more books before her love triangle officially comes to an end. The final security tape shows that at least Michelle's boyfriend is faithful to her. He didn't want to hang out with Ronnie at her birthday party. Tad tried to flirt with Ronnie, but she insulted him in front of everyone else. He ran away brokenhearted. Tad starts to look like the prime suspect. Hannah learns he bought flowers for Ronnie, and also one of the security guards switched out a tape. Hannah and Andrea used the jacuzzi at the gym. Personally, I would wait more than a week before using a jacuzzi where someone was murdered. But hey, that's just me. Andrea comes across an unexpected cell phone dead area. Hannah realizes this is interference from a hidden spy camera. There was someone watching Ronnie in the jacuzzi. Frank appears and confesses he's the culprit. He killed Ronnie to keep her away from Tad. That seems a little unnecessary, considering that Ronnie publicly humiliated Tad hours before her death. They were probably never going to date. Frank locks Hannah in the sauna. She uses some plastic to start a fire. She passes out from the heat and wakes up as the fire department saves her. Even though Hannah almost died, she's happy about what happened. Since she was locked in the sauna for so long, she lost more than 20 pounds and no longer has to diet. She looks great in her dress at Mother's book release party. Humorously, Every man thinks he is the inspiration for the handsome hero of the book. Every man except Norman, who is apparently the only honest guy in town. The end. Post-book follow-up. I like this book fine. It's sort of a repeat of Book 7. Ronni is suspiciously similar to Shauna Lee Quinn, except she's not stealing business away from Hannah. The books are different enough that the similar victims don't bother me. I did not like the investigation much. Like some previous books, Hannah forces her friends to do most of the legwork. They alibi 90% of the suspects off-screen. I prefer the earlier books in the series, where Hannah talks to the suspects and alibis them herself. That's more interesting than having Hannah play with her cat and do baking experiments while waiting for her friends to report back to her. Since the book went out of its way to list everyone in Ronnie's gym class, I thought that was going to be the main suspect list. It wasn't. Hannah continues to be old-fashioned for a woman who's 30. She watches multiple black and white movies. She complains about teenagers sending text messages with bad grammar. She hates that texting is a word now. At one point, Lisa says they can save a lot of money by writing off day-old cookies as a business expense for tax purposes. That's not accurate. If Hannah is running her business properly, buying ingredients is a business expense. She spent money on flour and sugar and whatnot for her bakery. That's a legitimate business expense. If she has to throw out some cookies, that's a business loss, but it's not an expense. Hannah doesn't have to pay additional money in order to throw out old cookies. Overall, this is a fine book. Hannah spends a lot of time on things that are not the murder mystery, but they tend to be interesting. Seeing Hannah go on a diet is especially interesting after all these books about her making junk food. The characters are just as solid as they normally are. It's such a comfortable, cozy read. I honestly want to read the next book now. I give Hannah Swensen number 11, Cream Puff Murder, a 7 out of 10.